Is the devil really scared of anything? Honestly, times like this, I wish I could just give him a call, or even just like phone up a hell hotline or spokesperson for a statement. It would truly make my life a heck of a lot easier. By the way, I'm Alexa, resident ookie spooky girly, and while I don't consider myself a monster expert per se, I definitely had a lot of fun today figuring out the best monsters to put on my list. So question for you, who do you think is the most disturbing monster out there? Let me know in the comments, and let's dive right into it, shall we? I might as well start with the obvious. God. Now, I can't quite make up my mind on if the devil is afraid of God or God is afraid of the devil, so I'm just gonna go with both. If you're a frequent viewer, you're probably very aware by now that I'm not exactly fond of the guy upstairs. Somebody who creates a very narrow world of right and wrong and curses down on people for the littlest problem? No thanks. If I'm following the theory that the devil was truly a creature cast down and punished by God, formerly one of his angels, I like the guy even less. Granted, I'm not someone who believes in the Bible or biblical way of thinking. Look, I'm not anti-religion, it's just not for me. If I was gonna go with any religion, it'd probably be Satanism. But personally, I'm just not a big religious person. Organized religion and I just don't get along. We're gonna move on before I start venting about Catholicism's evils. Next up we have Allah. Ale. I swear I did hunt for pronunciations, so whichever one is right, let me know in the comments. I'll use Allah from here on out because that's all I've seen. If I am wrong, I deeply apologize. And Allah or Hala is a female mythological creature recorded in the folklore of Bulgarians, Macedonians, and Serbs. They are considered demons of bad weather whose main purpose is to lead hail-producing thunderclouds in the direction of fields, vineyards, or orchards to destroy the crops or loot and take them away. Extremely voracious, particularly like to eat young people, and their gluttony is not limited to Earth. It is believed they sometimes try devouring the sun or the moon, causing eclipses, and that it would mean the end of the world should they succeed. Yeah, I can see why the devil doesn't really like them. When people encounter this creature, their mental or physical health, or even life, are in peril. However, this creature's favor can be gained by approaching her with respect and trust. Being in a good relationship with this creature is very beneficial because she makes her favorites rich and saves their lives in times of trouble. Now, their appearance is only vaguely described in folklore. According to different sources, they could look like a black wind, a gigantic creature of indistinct form, a huge-mouthed human-like or snake-like monster, a female dragon, or a raven. Oh, and that's not all. They may also assume various human or animal shapes, and they could even possess somebody. It is believed that the diversity of appearances described is due to this creature being a synthesis of a Slavic demon of bad weather and a similar demon of the Central Balkans pre-Slavic population. When they're described in folk tales with like a human-like appearance, her personality is similar to that of the Russian Baba Yaga. Now, she's said to live in the clouds or in a lake, spring, hidden remote place, in a forest, inhospitable mountain, cave, gigantic tree. While she tends to be hostile towards humans, she does have other powerful enemies that can defeat her, kind of like dragons. In Christianized tales, Saint Elijah takes the dragon's role, but in some cases the saint and the dragons fight Allah together. Eagles are also regarded as defenders against this creature, chasing them away from fields and thus preventing them from bringing hail clouds overhead. While some mythological beings are common to all Slavic ethnic groups, Allah seem to be exclusive to Bulgarian, Macedonian, and Serb folklore. I know I've mentioned it before, but I do like to re-emphasize. Even so, other Slavic groups also have demons of bad weather. Amongst East Slavs, the witch was called, yep, Baba Yaga. You guessed it. You're so good. It was imagined as a woman of gigantic stature with a big nose, iron teeth, and protruding chin. It was believed her presence brought thunderstorms and cold weather. The term Baba is present in customs and beliefs of all Slavic groups, usually as a personification of wind, darkness, and rain, which leads some scholars to believe there was a Proto-Slavic divinity or demon called Baba, associated with bad weather. Traces of beliefs in that, demons are preserved amongst Southern Slavs and expressions for the bad weather common in early spring. Brought to the Balkans from the ancient homeland, these beliefs combined with those of local populations eventually developed into the personage of the Allah. So the Slavic Balkan source of the Allah is related to the Vlivla, female demons of bad weather of the Romanians of the Timok Valley, who, like Allah, led hail clouds over crops to ruin them and uprooted trees. A Greek female demon, Lamia, might have also contributed in the development of the Allah. So just like Allah, she eats young folks, is called gluttonous, and in southern Serbia and northern Macedonia, Lamdia, a word described from Lamia, is also a synonym for Allah. I think I'm doing okay with pronunciations. The Bulgarian Lamia has remained a creature distinct from the Allah, but they share many similarities. Once again, there are many variations of Allah, and a lot of them I think would scare the devil. Alright, next up, we have another fun name, Droger. I swear, I watched 7 different videos for the pronunciation, so if I got it wrong, I apologize. This haunting figure from Scandinavian sagas and folklore emerges from the cold depths of Nordic myth, a creature of the undead, a revenant with a taste for the macabre. I like him already. These beings, known by various names, inhabit burial mounds and royal palaces, their spectral existence woven into the very fabric of medieval tales. Now, these creatures aren't your ethereal ghosts. They're not little wisps of the afterlife. They're corporeal. They're animated corpses guarding treasures buried with them. The Old Norse term draugr echoes with the haunting presence of a ghost, a spirit, the dead inhabitant of a cairn. Yet it's not merely a ghost. Once again, it is a reanimated corpse. So like a once dead being, walking again in the cold realms of the living. The term burial rite predates J.R.R. Tolkien's employ, describing these beings dwelling in burial mounds. Linguistically, the word draugr finds a home in Swedish, a loanword from the West Norse, with its modern usage hinting at a pale, ineffectual figure, dragging itself along. Kind of like how I am on a Monday morning getting out of bed. But what sets this creature apart from the typical ghostly apparition is their physicality. They possess superhuman strength and a hideous appearance, often described as death blue or corpse pale. Fun fact, I've once used a foundation called Corpse Flesh, and it matches my skin perfectly. They carry with them a reek of decay, a foul stench that tends to permeate the air around their haunting grounds. Their malevolence extends beyond the grave, reaching into the realms of magic. These undead beings wield an array of supernatural abilities. We're talking shape-shifting, weather manipulation, dream invasion, you name it. They can enter the dreams of the living, leaving behind tangible gifts as eerie reminders of their spectral visitations. A peculiar twist in their saga unfolds as the draugr is linked with the concept of vampirism, not the conventional fluid-sucking kind, but a contagious nature where the draugr begets another through a transformative attack. An undead epidemic, a chain of contagion that kind of scares me. These creatures, now not limited to haunting burial mounds, even though I've emphasized it as much today, they roam at night. They attack livestock and shepherds. Animals feeding near their graves kind of fall victim to a madness, driven to death by the draugr's influence. Now, this creature's malevolence extends to curses, disease, and even the creation of temporary darkness during daylight hours. So what motivates them? Well, greed, envy, longing for the life they once had. They tend to manifest it through a vicious attack. And no, not a fan. No, thank you. Alright, time to make a switch over to Norse mythology this time. None other than Jormungandr. I looked it up. This terrifying serpent coils itself around the fabric of the cosmos, a vast and mystical force bridging worlds. Its name combines Jormung, signifying the immense and superhuman, and Gandr, a term resonating with various meanings like snake, river, or staff. Born of Loki and a giantess whose name I could not figure out how to say, Jormungandr is flung into the great ocean by Odin, where it grows to such colossal proportions that it encircles the earth, grasping its own tail, which kinda is a symbol of cosmic significance. Eventually, Jormungandr, the release, kinda heralds Ragnarok. The cataclysmic final battle of the world. This mythic serpent, the middle child of Loki's brood, becomes quite the key player in the Norse apocalypse. Apparently it's the end of the world as we know it. Now Thor, the god of thunder, engages in an ongoing feud with this creature. Their epic clashes, documented in tales like Thor's fishing trip, add layers to the Norse narrative. In one story, Thor, lured into a strength challenge by the giant king, attempts to lift this creature, disguised as a colossal cat. Now despite the magical deception, Thor's partial lift stretches the serpent towards the sky, evoking awe and fear from the onlookers. Another tale unfolds during a fishing expedition with the giant Hymir. Denied bait, Thor uses the head of Hymir's largest ox. Now when our creature that we've been talking about today takes the bait, a fierce struggle ensues, poison spraying from the serpent. Hymir, overcome with fear, cuts the line, leaving the serpent to return to its encircling position around the earth. The serpent's violent unrest in the sea, releasing its tail, becomes, the end of the world. Now, as our creature thrashes onto the land, it joins forces with Fenrir, the monstrous wolf, to confront the gods on the plain of Vigrid. The prophecy foretells Thor's final battle with the serpent, leading to both their deaths. Now, Jormungandr's significance extends beyond Norse mythology, drawing parallels with the Hindu god Indra's slaying of the dragon Vritrya, and echoing a Balto-Slavic motif of storm gods combating serpents. The serpent biting its own tail resonates with the theme of the bound monster in Norse mythology, a creature destined to break free at Ragnarok. Yeah, I can see why the devil might be a little scared. Me too, that's a lot of gods. And finally, we're ending today with Sedna. She's the goddess of the sea and marine animals in Inuit mythology, also known as the Mother of the Sea or Mistress of the Sea. She has a bundle of other names, but once again, while I tried learning how to pronounce them for today, I would have butchered them beyond belief, and I don't want to disrespect this tale in any way. So the story of Sedna, which is a creation myth, describes how she came to rule over Adlivan, the Inuit underworld. So when it comes to Sedna, more than one version of her legend does exist. Some legends have her as the daughter of a goddess, while others might only mention her father. So in one legend, Sedna is a giant, the daughter of the creator god Anguta, with a great hunger that causes her to attack her parents. Angered, Anguta takes her out to sea and throws her over the side of his kayak. Whoopsies. As she clings to the sides, he chops off her fingers and she sinks to the underworld, becoming the ruler of the monsters of the deep. Her huge fingers become the seals, walruses, and whales hunted by the locals. Now, in another version of the legend, she is dissatisfied with a man found for her by her father and decides to instead marry a dog. I don't blame her. Her father is so angry at this that he throws her into the sea, and when she tries to climb back into the boat, he cuts off her fingers. And I'm sure you can assume where this is going. Yes, they become the first seals, and she becomes a mighty sea goddess. Now when she is angered, some folks travel to wash and comb her hair for her, after which she is placated and releases the animals to the hunters. In other versions though, she's unable to comb her hair because of her lack of fingers, so folks have to brush it for her. In the Netsilik region, the story states that Nuliayuk was a mistreated orphan, so one day the people tried to get rid of her by attempting to drown her by chopping off her fingertips, which transformed into seals and walruses. Now eventually she married a sculpin and lives in the sea controlling all sea animals. Other versions of the legend depict Sedna as a beautiful maiden who rejects marriage proposals from the hunters of her village. When an unknown hunter appears, Sedna's father agrees to give her to him as a wife in return for fish. Sedna's father gives Sedna a sleeping potion and gives her to the hunter, who takes her to a large nest on a cliff, revealing his true form, a great bird spirit. Her father attempts to rescue her when he realizes the truth, but the bird spirit becomes angry, causing a great storm, and Sedna's father panics and throws her into the raging sea. Attempting to cling to the kayak, her hands freeze and her fingers fall off this time, becoming the creatures of the sea. She falls to the bottom of the sea and grows a fishtail. Now she is kidnapped or deceived by a different bird creature in yet another version. But at the end of the day, she is the goddess of the sea, and I can see why the devil might want to fear her.
Number 5. Pazuzu. Our first terrifying demon up on this list has made quite the career for himself in pop culture. He's picked up some small gigs here and there. He's serving as a sort of mascot of sorts for the real fake band Gorillaz, multiple cameos on Futurama, and won some acclaim for his star-studded role in The Exorcist, possessing Reagan and making us all afraid of pea soup. Although his real historical background is far more interesting than any of his pop culture appearances. Pazuzu has been around for a long time, first being recorded as a Babylonian demon wind god, who was always playing both sides, so he'd come out on top. He was a god of wind, and it was thought that the wind ravaging, storms, and locusts were all byproducts of Pazuzu's rage. But he was also thought to be a protector. He would protect the home, taking a particular liking to watching over pregnant women. He was an incredibly destructive force in nature, and when it would come time to throw down, Pazuzu would fly across the world, breaking the wings of other demons to prevent them from getting into any trouble. Sort of like a demonic Batman. His portrayal in The Exorcist is probably where most people know him from and assume those things about him, where he's seen as a much more plain Jane possessing demon, lacking his impressive wings and other traits, and not doing a whole lot of flying around or anything with the wind, focusing a lot more on projectile vomiting and harassing a couple of priests. The real Pazuzu is a lot cooler than his Exorcist appearance, but no doubt more people know about that than they do an ancient Babylonian wind god. I don't think I'd like to spend much time with either incarnation face to face, and those priests definitely didn't want to either. Now ghouls, goblins, lend me your ears, and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. Number 4. Belphegor. Now another demon who's had his moment in pop culture. Maybe you recognize Belphegor from Supernatural's first fledgling season, all the way back when the boys were wide-eyed and hadn't even died once yet. Or maybe if you're a Persona fan, you recognize Belphegor as the perpetually bored demon on the can. It's a video game with a talking cat. And you play as a guy who's got a healthy sleep schedule and can manage his social circle well. It's not a game focused on realism. But it turns out, doing a little research, there was a reason for this foul demon's appearance. One of the 7 princes of hell, the demonic icon of sloth's favorite offering isn't blood or a fresh goat, but a little mud pie, feces if you want to get scientific with it. Look, I'm not going to judge, and I'm not going to ask what he's doing with it. Old lore just says that if you wanted to summon Belphegor, you had to bring him a lot of feces. There's no metric volume ever listed, just a lot. If you do summon him, he'll trade you wondrous riches, expand your ability to discover new things, expand your consciousness, but at the cost of the temptation of your mortal soul, and you'll also probably never be able to wash your hands clean again. I'm sorry, I don't usually work so blue. It's the lazy man's comedy, although perchance that's fitting for the demon prince of sloth. Belphegor has been depicted in all manner of ways over the years, appearing sometimes as esoteric things like tree branches, or sometimes taking the form of beautiful women. But one wood carving in the 18th century of him sitting on an 18th century John sealed his fate pretty much forever, and then since then, he's almost always been depicted as a horned demon sitting on a throne of sorts. Belphegor, I want to make something clear here. I'm not making fun of you. I'm trying to make sense of all this. Number 3, the Legion. Now, this next demon is a tiny bit of a cheat because although it's supposed to be a top 5 list, I'm about to make it a top 500,000 list. This next demon is known as the Legion, for it is many. The Legion's first documented recording is from the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus Christ encountered a man possessed by a demon. When he spoke to the man in an effort to exorcise him, he asked for the name of the demon inside him, and the man responded, "Legion," for there were many devils inside him. Upon being exorcised from the man, the Legion asked if it could instead be transferred to a herd of pigs, which he then obliged. Now the Legion is pretty atypical when it comes to demons. It's not the prince of anything, it's not the manifestation of any one sin, and it's not any one thing at all. The Legion is made of countless demons that all function together in unison like a hive mind. When one has a thought, the rest of the Legion obeys. When one member of the Legion speaks, the rest of them speak all at once. Now sometimes the armies of Satan are referred to as the legions of hell, but I guess the Legion is a separate thing altogether. It must make filling out forms very difficult. No one's really sure what sort of demons the Legion are or what they look like even. It's just agreed that there's a lot of them all working together on their common goals. Like I said, no one really knows what they look like, but if you've ever seen a horde of, anything all in one place, you can't imagine that it would be anything pleasant. Now the Legion isn't as much of a pop culture starlet as some of the other demons I've mentioned on this list, but that doesn't mean that it's influenced things in pop culture. The phrase Legion for we are many appears in all sorts of different things, probably because it's just a very cool way to describe yourself. A recurring boss fight in the Castlevania video games called Legion appears as a writhing mass of bodies, no doubt inspired by the story. And the character in Mass Effect named Legion is an AI life form comprised of thousands of individual AI working in tandem, who directly references the story, introducing itself, saying, "We are Legion, for we are many." And while I'm on it, Legion was the entire best character in Mass Effect, but that's neither here nor there. Sleep easy, big guy. Number 2, Beelzebub. Now we're getting into the big hitters. Beelzebub is thought to be one of the first angels to have ever fallen to hell, alongside Leviathan and Lucifer himself. He and Lucifer actually have a bit of an identity crisis, as the two are sometimes thought to be interchangeable. They must have similar haircuts. Some demonologists argue that Beelzebub is another name for Lucifer, and some others pose that he's one of his most trusted lieutenants. But whatever Beelzebub is, everyone can agree that he's pretty horrifying. His history is fairly interesting. It's thought that his namesake is a mockery of the god Baal, an ancient Bronze Age god of fertility. Some scholars believe that Beelzebub's name comes from Baal-zebub, translating to Lord of the Flies, inferring that the followers of Baal are nothing more than flies worshipping a dung god. They didn't get the memo that Belphegor was the dung god. The Lord of the Flies sort of ended up becoming Beelzebub's title, with almost all depictions of the demon featuring flies in ubiquitous amounts around him. Occasionally he's even depicted as a giant fly. It's very Kafkaesque. Beelzebub is said to be one of the most powerful demons inside of Hell's domain, capable of great control over humanity, able to tempt them. Beelzebub was cited during the Salem witch trials as the entity that had corrupted and swayed so many women to witchery. Now there's some discrepancy as to what sin Beelzebub is thought to preside over, with some offerings saying that he represents pride, some others saying that he represents gluttony, which I would say probably seems a little more fitting for a fly demon anyway, and he's most commonly associated with gluttony. Number 1, Asmodeus. Yeah, it probably would have made a lot of sense to have Lucifer as the number 1 spot on this list. I mean, he's the king of hell and all that. So let's just take this moment, give him an honorable mention, and say he's at the number 0 spot, just because I thought it was a little obvious, and I'm pretty sure you know who Satan is, and there's other demons we could talk about, bring up some unknown ones. So filling in at the number 1 spot is Asmodeus, one of the princes of hell and the embodiment of the cardinal sin of lust. Asmodeus fell from heaven alongside the other fallen angels, reforming as a prince of hell. Asmodeus is said to have been married to Lilith, the primordial she-demon, famed for her banishing from the Garden of Eden and famed for destroying Fraser Crane. Lilith was cursed and banished for her defilement and depicted as a temptress, and Asmodeus saw all that and was like, "Hey girl, I'm into all that stuff. You want to procreate an endless stream of demons into the world and reign over a dominion of chaos?" And the rest is wedded bliss. Depictions of Asmodeus vary pretty wildly from case to case. Occasionally he's drawn as a handsome young fella, but most commonly he's depicted as a squat, vaguely humanoid creature with a rooster leg, the tail of a snake, 3 heads, comprising of a bull, a goat, and a scruffy demon head as the center. Asmodeus presides over lust with the help of his beloved Lilith, and the two tempt humans with madness and desire to ruin people with lechery. Somehow this wasn't enough for Asmodeus though, as some stories also describe Asmodeus as having command over the betting halls of hell and is responsible for tempting man's souls towards gambling. So what I am hearing from this is that Asmodeus probably parties harder than any demon out there.
Kicking off at number 5, the questing beast. And what better place to begin our folkloric journey than with the ultimate adversary of all things monster hunting in the long history of the British Isles, the questing beast. And yeah, whilst the name may be a dead giveaway, in folklore there is perhaps no other creature that is quite as bizarre as this one. Otherwise known as the Beaglatistion or the barking beast, this particular creature is a key monster in Arthurian legend, and in the forgotten days of King Arthur's Britain, his Knights of the Round Table, most prominently Sir Palomides and Sir Percival, made it their quest to hunt this thing down. As the legend goes, this strange creature had the head and neck of a snake, the body of a leopard, the haunches of a lion, and the cloven feet of a hart. The name, primarily Beaglatistion, comes from the great noise that it emits from its belly, a barking noise that allegedly sounded like 30 couple hounds questing. Bizarrely enough though, the legend of the questing beast is allegedly a variant of the mythological medieval view on giraffes. Do with that information as you will, but yeah, that's anyone's guess. Perhaps the most memorable appearance of the questing beast in Arthurian legend was in Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur, where after he had an affair with his half-sister Morgan, they didn't know they were related at the time, just FYI, the questing beast appears to Arthur in a disturbing vision drinking from a clear and still pool. In that same dream, he sees a prophecy that foretells Mordred's destruction of Camelot, and he then intertwines the two. Later on, Merlin reveals to Arthur that the questing beast was actually born of a human woman, a princess who lusted after her own brother. Sound familiar? Well, in the legend told by Merlin, eventually the brother was sentenced to death by their own father and was torn to shreds by rabid dogs, the same sound that the questing beast made. Essentially, Arthur saw his own near downfall in a dream, and the questing beast was the result of that. Yeah, exactly. Star Wars ain't got nothing on this. Swinging in at number 4, the Darug Dua. As William Congreve wrote in his 1697 play The Morning Bride, "Nor hell a fury like a woman scorned." The Darug Dua is perhaps Ireland's most tragic and fearsome tale of that fact, one that is still whispered at grave sites and burials to this day. Surprisingly enough, in terms of horror, the Darug Dua is perhaps a lot more recognisable than we may have first imagined. In fact, loosely meaning red blood sucker, this terrifying visage of folklore horror is the closest that Celtic mythology has come to detailing the archetypal vampire. As the legend goes, thousands of years ago, she was a legendary beauty with blood-red lips and pale blonde hair, and her true name has since been lost to the ages, overshadowed by the folklore villain she became. As kind as she was beautiful, the Darug Dua was the envy of every clan in Ireland, and suitors lined up to win her hand in marriage. As fate would have it though, this sweet-natured girl fell in love with a local peasant, an equally handsome man who was kind and well-natured too, but alas, he was penniless. Eventually, the girl's father instead agreed for an old and violently cruel man to marry her, securing a fortune in the process. He kept her locked in a tower and had an affinity for making her bleed. Day after day, he tortured her, locked away in a tower cell, while she waited in vain for the kind peasant boy to somehow come and rescue her. That hope alone kept her alive for many months, but one day, when all hope was gone, she took her own life. As the legend tells it, the Darug Dua is buried in a small churchyard near Strongbow's Tree in the southeast of Ireland. But that wasn't the end of her. In death, she rose from the earth that same night she was buried, driven mad by the half-remembered visions of her own blood welling on her own skin, thirsty for revenge. As they tell it, every night the Darug Dua rises as the red blood drinker, hunting down young men in a blind and natural revenge. She calls to them in a strange, haunting siren song that lingers in their mind as they sleep, where they eventually follow her to a grave and she feasts on them. The Darug Dua is as tragic as it is violent, and it's a cautionary tale that leaves little to be desired. Next up at number 3, the Cuir Honach. And on the same theme as the Darug Dua, there is perhaps no other female figure of folklore that is more terrifying than the legendary Cuir Honach. And this one, instead of drawing upon the tragic image of the forsaken daughter turned ravenous blood-drinking vampire, this one instead takes the visage of the mother. And not just any archetypal mother, No. Oh no. But instead, the mother of the devil himself, the fire spitter, the mother of all demons, and one of the greatest adversaries in the whole of Irish mythology. As the legend goes, when the planet was nothing but a swirling mass of vapour, water and rock, Cuireadh was hatched deep in the molten core of the planet. There for eons upon eons she waited, patiently biding her time before we humans stepped into existence. You see, the fire spitter needed food for her children to feast upon, and guess what? We were that food. And in the early days of humanity, the mother of demons and her children feasted upon us in a frenzy. However, there is one turning point of this legend where something remarkable happened, and believe it or not, but the legend of Cuireadh is actually inexplicably tied to the patron saint of Ireland himself, Patrick. Well, he went by Patricius back then, but still. Strangely enough, when the legend of St. Patrick is attributed to his removal of all of the snakes from Ireland in some folkloric canons, those very same snakes are instead the fire spitter and her children. As the legend goes, Patrick had traced Cuireadh's home back to the cave on Station Island, which also allegedly served as a portal to hell. There they battled for 2 days and 2 nights before the fire spitter retreated through the swamps and poisoned all of the wells on her way. Eventually the pair fought in a great lake where the mother of demons swallowed St. Patrick whole as they both sank into the cold, shadowy darkness of Loch Derg. Thankfully for him though, St. Patrick tore his way out of her belly and she was banished to the dark, miserable depths for eternity. Thank you very much, St. Patrick. Coming in at number 2, the Changeling. Because we can't really talk about Celtic folklore without describing some of the most prolific entities in the mythos of both Celtic and European culture. The Fae, fairies. In Ireland, the Tuatha De Danann and the Ail Shee, the people of the mounds, and a race of mythical and mystical entities that have since established themselves in playing some of the most important roles in Celtic folklore. In Irish and Scottish mythology specifically, the Tuatha De Danann were considered to be the people of the goddess Danu, the mother goddess, and later they eventually evolved into a far more supernatural design. It is said that the fairies of Celtic folklore could bestow great blessings and equally dangerous curses, and perhaps one of the most terrifying examples of that is with the Changeling, a fairy child left behind in place of a stolen human child. Now, although the theme itself has been used to explain away many unexplained afflictions, diseases and disorders of the time, the cultural significance of the Changeling, particularly in horror literature and cinema, has been pretty staggering. You see, it plays on one key parental fear of a child becoming uncanny, a split double of their former self. A changeling is typically identified by a number of unusual traits. In Irish legend, a fairy child may appear sickly or will cease to grow in size like a normal child would. In many folklore legends, these changelings grow notable physical characteristics. They may grow a beard or grow long in the tooth, literally. Quickly they may display an intelligence that is far beyond their years, as well as develop the power of foresight. They will know things that should be outside of their knowledge, harnessed by the power of the Ail Shee. In some very rare cases, it was the very elderly of a fairy that was replaced as a changeling, so that the old fairy could instead live in comfort, being coddled by its human parents without them ever knowing. In folk legend, protecting oneself from a changeling was of the utmost importance, and simple charms such as an inverted coat or open iron scissors left where the child slept were required to ward them off. Beware the changeling. That's all I can say. And finally, coming in at number 1 spot, Balor. And truth be told, we can't really have any other creation of folklore as our number 1 spot. Balor, the big bad baddie of Celtic mythology, is a figure that features most proficiently in the mythos of Irish and Scottish folklore. Whereas on the one hand we have the mythical Tuatha De Danann, on the other we have the Fomorians, a supernatural race of monstrosities who shamble their way from the bowels of the earth to wreak havoc on we humans and engage in an eternal battle with the Fae. In Celtic mythology, this guy is the tyrant leader of them all. He is often described as a giant with one single large eye that wreaks destruction wherever it casts its gaze. Where have we heard that one before? Perhaps derived from the common Celtic word Balaros, meaning the deadly one, Balor is the be-all and end-all of destruction and devastation in the ancient history of the British Isles. Believed to be the personification of blight and drought, it was written in prophecy that Balor would eventually be slain by his own grandson, Lurk, who would become the storm god of Celtic mythology and bring an end to the suffering that Balor wrought. From his fortress on Tory Island, in many myths and legends, Balor is described as a giant eye at the top of a tower tower that when opened carves a path of destruction in its wake. As many legends tell it, once open, it could destroy entire armies with a single glance. Although in many other instances Balor is a humanoid figure that walks beside men, as some folklorists described, he had a single eye in his forehead, a venomous fiery eye. There were always 7 coverings over this eye, and one by one Balor removed them. With the first, the bracken began to wither. With the second, the grass became copper coloured. With the third, the woods and the timber began to heat. With the fourth, smoke came from the trees. With the fifth, everything grew red. With the sixth, it sparked. And with the seventh, they were all set on fire, and the whole countryside was ablaze. You see, whichever way you spin it, Balor was the personification of pretty much all evil in Celtic mythology and folklore, and when it comes to big bad baddies, yeah, they don't get much nastier than this guy.
Coming in at number 5, we have Phoenix. Most people see the Phoenix as nothing more than a myth, but there have been potential sightings throughout the years that led many to believe the bird is real. Those who believe this think the bird is almost extinct due to being hunted thousands of years ago, and those left live in fear and are hiding. The Phoenix is an immortal creature. Once it comes to the end of one life cycle, it will simply be born again from its own ashes. Some say it burns to ashes at the end of its life, others claim it simply passes and decomposes before being born again. The first time that the Phoenix was recorded in history was in the 19th century. Since then, many more have told what they believe to know about the creature. Some believe that the Phoenix was a key to everlasting life or a gateway in heavenly paradise. It is now believed that this may have led to humanity attempting to contain and keep the powers for themselves, leading to the near extinction of the species. Since this, little has been known about them, and few sightings of what might be the remaining few birds. In the first text written about the creature, the author made an observation: the Phoenix outlives 9 ravens. Once people started to notice the nature of their lives, the people were unstoppable in their pursuit. There is also evidence supporting the idea that the Egyptians prayed to the sacred bird. They understood the rarity of the creature and saw it as a blessing to worship. Today, the Phoenix is often seen in books and movies. There have also been studies carried out attempting to study the existence of the animal. People will often refer to things rising from the ashes in triumph in a way a phoenix would. It is a celebrated creature while also wildly being seen as mythical. Who knows, one day we may know even more about them. Coming in at number 4, salamander. Salamanders are of course real. They are a group of amphibians typically characterized by their lizard-like appearance, but it is believed they were once more than just your average lizard. Time seems to have taken something from these creatures. It is believed in folklore that the creature once had an affinity with fire. It has the ability to control and create the elemental fire. They are able to sustain fire, being able to walk through or stand in it untouched by the flames. Some have claimed that during the tragedy of Pompeii, the fire salamander was the only thing that remained of the city, the only thing not destroyed by the lava. They are able to put out fire as well as starting them. Apparently they dwell in locations with high temperatures, for example within volcanoes. There are stories that come from legends of salamanders being created when glass blowers left their furnace burning for many days and nights. The lizards nearby were transformed by the flame and it became a part of them. There is a lot of evidence and claims that the salamander existed, but it's unknown if they still exist. Some people think that over time these creatures were adapted to a different climate and location and lost their ability to withstand, extinguish and control fire. Leonardo da Vinci was in particular obsessed with the creatures. He did experiments and wrote what he could about the peculiar creature. He wrote about witnessing the skin of the lizard constantly renew in the fire. He said the creature had no digestive organs and it feeds off of the heat of the flame. Some believe that the fire salamander was the last remnant from dragons. Like every other ancient creature, it either adapted to the new world or became extinct. Coming in at number 3, we have fire serpents. The fire serpent is said to be an evil entity. It chooses to represent itself as an anthropomorphic snake. It is said that the entity can travel across the sky resembling a shooting star or a fiery rocket. It will look like a blue ball of flame shooting across the sky. It is said that this creature and evil entity reveals itself at night. It is said that the giant serpent can choose any form to appear to you in, whatever it needs to appear as for you to wander into its path. As the creature is a serpent, it cannot speak or hear. It only hopes appearing as the person you love the most in the world, you'll go to it without needing any words of confirmation. It is said once you are visited by the serpent, you will not remember the encounter, but you will experience weight loss and exhibit signs of insanity. Many people claim to have seen the serpent, but its terrifying existence is still something that many doubt. Those who have been driven insane by the experience are not believed about the encounter, or they simply disappear without a trace or anyone to witness the encounter. Many think that this creature is responsible for many shooting stars. It's unknown if there's just one entity or if there are multiple, but the sightings have been few and far between, suggesting it works alone. There are some Aztec statues that depict the fire serpent. This has led people to believe the creature has been on Earth far longer than we have. It seems unable to find its way back home and has had to adapt to our lives here, keeping a distance where possible. Historians believe the creature was a weapon of the sun, and they both worshipped and feared the creature. Coming in at number 2, Sharuf. The Sharuf is a humanoid creature made of rock, crystals, and magma. It is said that they live deep underground in magma pools. These are mostly found deep within Chilean volcanoes. For many years, the Chilean people have blamed the creatures for causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. It is because of these creatures that in ancient times human sacrifices were made to volcanoes. They believed this was the only way to satiate the beast's taste for human flesh. They believed once the creature had been fed the sacrifice, the volcano would no longer erupt, or at least not until he got hungry once again. Some believe that the creature was originally created when someone fell deep into the volcano. Once they fell, something happened when the lava did not tear through their body but instead formed a hard layer outside of their skin. As they laid there, the rock layer around the skin got thicker and thicker until it was part of them. Since then, they were the humanoid creature. It lost all humanity. It grew a hunger for flesh and demanded a human sacrifice. They grew angry and punished the humans if they did not show a willingness to sacrifice in the way they once did. It is said once transformed, it can outlive its human counterparts. It forgets who it was and dwells in the volcanic rock for thousands of years. The human ritual of human sacrifice ended sometime in the 1960s. Each time there was a disaster, they would make a sacrifice. They did this in hopes it would stop the earthquake, extreme weather, or anything else. This was finally stopped in the 60s when it was recognized as barbaric. It is unknown if the creatures still dwell, causing natural disasters. Maybe the lack of sacrifice has starved them of what they needed to survive. If the theory of the creature was correct, this was stopped or slowed down the occurrence of natural disaster, so it seems it still dwells beneath the surface. And finally, in at number 1 we have dragons. It would not be a list about fire creatures if it didn't include dragons. Belief about dragons vary from place to place. They are often portrayed as winged, horned, four-legged, and capable of flight. I'm sure most of you have seen or heard of a dragon before. They are one of the most popular mythical creatures to ever exist. It is believed that the teachings about dragons comes from East Asian culture. They tell stories of their deities having dragons as their personal mounts or companions. They are seen as strong creatures. They are good-natured and work with humans, not against them. The question is, are dragons 100% mythical, or are they legend born from an old truth? I'm sure there are many people who refuse to believe in dinosaurs, so it could be possible that the dragons were something that roamed the earth during or before the Triassic period. As we know, many dinosaurs were capable of flight and somewhat resemble a dragon, so it's not the most unbelievable theory in the world. There may even be evidence to support this theory. On April 1st, 1998, an article was published that revealed a discovery. They had uncovered a near-complete skeleton of a dragon-like dinosaur. They named their findings Smorg. The discovery was suspended in a jar and shocked everyone who saw it. The dragon-like creature is small enough to sit on your finger. Many believe this to be a hoax and dismissed it, but there is no doubting this little dinosaur looks like a dragon that was preserved by the earth for possibly millions of years. What do you think? Do you believe that dragons could be real, or just something that exists in the stories like Harry Potter or Game of Thrones?
Number 5, the Honey Island Swamp Monster. Now our first entry is going to take us down to Louisiana, deep in the bayou, where all manner of sinister creatures are said to call their home. And there's a number of cryptids that live deep in the swamps. We got the Rougarou, the Night Folk, and the Honey Island Swamp Monster, beasts that got my attention right now. The Honey Island Swamp Monster is kind of like a Cajun cousin to Bigfoot. He's described as a gigantic bipedal furry monster resembling a hybrid of ape and man. The creature's been sighted and described dozens of times over through the years, but its initial sightings take us all the way back to the 1960s. This first documented report of Old Honey, as he sometimes likes to be called, comes from an air traffic controller who in his spare time took up wildlife photography, and his favorite spot to snap pictures was in, yep, you guessed it, Honey Island up in eastern Louisiana. After his passing, when relatives were going through his belongings, they found a series of photos and reels of Super 8 film that were thought to contain this creature. Now he claimed that in his time photographing Honey Island Swamp, he had discovered trails of footprints of these giant feet that showed only 4 toes, and near these untraceable mystery prints were the bodies of boars who had been ravaged beyond recognition. Now normally I would just say that's probably just the night folk doing what night folk do best, but this definitely sounds like the work of a vicious cryptid. Now interestingly, there are some cryptozoologists out there who cast a little doubt on the Honey Island Swamp monster. Not that they don't think he's real, mind you, but that they think he's a different cryptid called the rougarou, which I mentioned all the way back 30 seconds ago if you remember that. Another Cajun cryptid that I love so much I couldn't resist sneaking it into this video like he didn't want to pay for a ticket. It's top 6 scary cryptids now. Can't stop me when I'm filming, I make the rules. The rougarou is described to be similar to a werewolf. It's a giant wolf man who lives in the swamps, but he hunts those who disobey the rules of Lent, which is surprisingly a lot more pious than most werewolves are. Could both of these creatures be out there in the swamps having a little monster mash out there? And if you're looking for way more cryptid content, we have got loads of that on Top 5 Scary and then some. Cryptid's not your jam? We got conspiracies, UFO sightings, stories too good to be true, and stories too true to be good. Click through, stay screaming, stay subscribed, but stay watching this video because we worked hard on it, okay? Moving on.
Number 4. Ogopogo. One of the most common types of cryptid is the lake monster. There's of course Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, Champ, the lake monster from Lake Champlain, and Ishi, the Japanese lake monster. But for my pick, I'm going to be talking about the legendary creature who is said to reside in the depth of the Lake Okanagan in the Canadian province of British Columbia. It is known as the Ogopogo. This creature is closely tied with native myths, which told of a creature that they called Na'atik, which translated to the water god or water demon. They believed that the creature demanded a sacrifice in exchange for safe passage across the lake. Because of this, the First Nations of the area would sacrifice small animals before entering the water. Stories tell of a visiting chief who refused to offer up a sacrifice as he did not believe in the creature, and as a result, when he and his family tried to cross the lake in their canoe, the creature used his long tail to whip up the surface of the lake and suck the canoe and its occupants down to the bottom of the lake. Ogopogo is often described as being a serpent-like creature, about 50 feet in length, with smooth, dark skin, who moves through the water at incredible speeds by coiling its body in vertical undulations and propelling itself forward with its powerful tail. Every year, there are reports from people claiming to see Ogopogo traveling across the Okanagan, with the usual grainy footage and blurry photos being given as proof of the creature's existence. In the 1980s, a cash reward was offered by a local tourism agency if anyone could prove the beast was real. After harsh words from Greenpeace, they were forced to clarify that the proof must be videotaped, and that if found, the monster was not to be captured. The Ogopogo is officially listed as an endangered species, and is therefore protected from hunters. In one of the creature's most famous sightings, he was seen by 50 tourists who watched the Ogopogo for 45 minutes from the shore of a local beach, with one tourist being able to capture 10 seconds of 8mm film featuring the monster. Skeptics say that the sightings of the creature are usually groups of otters that are mistaken for one long creature rather than the several animals swimming together in a row. But regardless of the origin of this cryptid, or whether he is real or not, the Ogopogo has become a beloved tourist draw for the area, with the city of Kelowna, BC, even having a statue of the creature as both a nod to local legend and a place for tourists to take their photo with the mythical creature.
Number 3. El Chupacabra. Since the 1970s, livestock farmers have said its name with a careful whisper, hushed tones under their breath. Is this creature even real, or is it just another tall tale that's gotten out of hand? The Chupacabra is a cryptid notorious across Latin America and the southwestern United States. Its name literally translates to goat sucker, which is hilarious, in reference to its vampiric feeding habits. Now, depending on who is telling the stories and where, interestingly enough, the Chupacabra's appearance varies fairly wildly. In Spanish-speaking countries like Puerto Rico, the Chupacabra is depicted as very alien in appearance. It's very reptilian, has like little bug eyes, eyes and has spines running down its arm and its back. Now, alternatively, and this is the depiction I suspect more of you probably know it as this is the more North American southwestern version of it, the classic chupacabra if you'd like, is depicting it as a feral, canid-like creature, looking like a mutant dog, usually with missing chunks of fur, angry snarls, looks something more like out of Resident Evil than it would be an alien. I think it's very funny that these are the two speeds of chupacabra. You have alien or weird dog. There's a small section of the cryptozoology community who suspect that these two might actually be two entirely different cryptids altogether, and we're conflating them, complicating matters ever so slightly, but you know, that's an argument for the cryptid subreddit. A lot of politics there, that's all I'll say. The first origins of the critter can be traced back to the 70s in Puerto Rico, when a string of mysterious, extremely violent livestock deaths were all happening around the country with no explanation for what had happened. These animals, primarily goats and sheep, would be found drained bone dry of their bodily fluids. That's why it's called the goat sucker. There are some experts who believe it's possible that the chupacabra could be sightings of a thought extinct species called the thylacine, and that's probably not how you pronounce that. I could have looked it up. Known more formally to his friends as the Tasmanian tiger, it's a weird little critter that doesn't quite look like a cat, doesn't quite look like a dog, and is kind of somewhere in the middle. Very cute, but it's thought to be extinct, with its last remains being officially found in 2022. There are some skeptics and experts out there who wonder if perhaps this real-life mythical beast could be what people have seen when they see the chupacabra. So what do you think, my delightful little comment section? Is the fabled chupacabra really out there terrorizing the lives of goats, or would you have to be a sucker to believe that?
Oh, because he sucks goats.
Yeah, that's what you gotta get down on the car ride home. Number 2, the Goat Man of Maryland. Maryland is a beautiful state that a lot of important people over the years have called home. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Babe Ruth, and if you believe the folklore, the Maryland Goat Man. I've talked about the Maryland Goat Man a few times on this channel, and I'm very likely to talk about him a few more times because he's a cryptid who just can't be bleat. Like beat, because he's a goat.
Oh!
I'll see myself out. No, there's more of me. The Goat Man is a villain straight out of a direct-to-DVD horror movie. Said to resemble a satyr, this Chronicles of Narnia extra haunts the woods of Maryland, hatchet in hand, ready to attack anyone who dares disturb its territory. Like any good cryptid, there's some variations depending on who's telling the story of what he looks like. Sometimes he's more humanoid with a human face and a furry body, whereas sometimes it's outright monstrous with a goat's head and bipedal, looking like something out of a Greek myth. I greatly prefer the latter. The Goat Man has been a popular urban legend for a while now, with the earliest sightings and stories going all the way back to the 70s, when dogs around the area of Bowie, Maryland, were going missing at an alarming rate. Whispers came out about a malicious goat man who was stalking the woods, taking your pets as his prey, and these rumors caught on like wildfire, and the character became a very popular campfire story. You know, you'd see graffiti sprayed on the walls saying things like, Goat Man was here, or Goat Man is watching, remind you to behave. Now, Goat Man's possible backstories are far too good to include. It's half the reason I have such a fondness for this cryptid. Depending on what Marylander you're talking to, you might hear that the Goat Man is a complete mystery. Just a strange goat demon who's bad to the bone. Or, if you want a way more colorful backstory, like I know you do, then the Goat Man is the product of a mysterious mad scientist's experiment to... I don't know really. Do something with goats? Very possible this could be a Jeff Goldblum fly situation, somebody merged with a goat. Anyway, he escapes from the lab and he wreaks havoc on humanity and is said to mostly haunt Lover's Lane and go after teenagers in parked cars. I way prefer the backstory where he's a lab experiment and he's like a furry Jason Voorhees going after people smooching. Goat Man, we absolutely love you. If you are watching, please feel free to reach out, DM Top 5 Scary. We would love to have you on the channel to do a collab. You can share your side of things.
Number 1, Man Bear Pig. This next creature has been described as the most super serial threat to our planet. You see, there is something out there which threatens our very existence and may be the end to the human race as we know it. I'm talking, of course, about Man Bear Pig. It is a creature which roams the earth alone. It is half man, half bear, and half pig. Some people say that Man Bear Pig isn't real. Well, I'm here to tell you now. Man Bear Pig is very real, and he most certainly exists. I'm Serial. Man-Bear-Pig doesn't care who you are or what you've done. Man-Bear-Pig simply wants to get you. I'm Super Cereal. He is said to be a demon from hell that thrives on temptation and is known for making deals with societies, giving them nice cars and premium-style ice cream, and then repaying the debt by unleashing unspeakable horrors and carnage upon the next generation. This deal was made by generations who knew the cost that the deal would have on their ancestors, but they were not expecting to live long enough to see the consequences of their actions. Man-Bear-Pig was recently responsible for a lethal series of attacks in Colorado, but despite the brutality in front of them, many locals still refused to believe that such a creature could exist. There is a rumor that a new deal was offered by the demon, where the town could stave off annihilation if they could give up soy sauce and Red Dead Redemption 2. Of course, the town refused such an unfair offer, cause plain rice, ugh. They instead renegotiated the deal with Man-Bear-Pig so that he would simply return in 5 years and unleash his fury 1,000-fold. How long do we have before Man-Bear-Pig returns? And is there anything we can do to stop him? If only we had taken Al Gore more cereal.
In at number 5 we have Wei Chivo. The Wei Chivo is known as the Spirit of Midnight and originated around the Mayan town of Yucatan. This creature is said to roam the mountains during the night and has a human body but a goat's head and legs, like a billy goat on 2 legs, which is the typical image of the devil according to the Mayan people. The Wei Chivo has big twisted horns, large strong legs, and dangerously sharp claws, along with a long beard, hairy chest, and scary red eyes. These terrifying creatures can possess human intelligence, has a massive amount of strength, and can move extremely quick. The Wei Chivo is said to have dreadful moans, thunderous laughter, insults its prey, and quenches its thirst with goat's blood. It is extremely evil, hates the light, and worships darkness. Their mission is to punish men for their sins, and if anyone speaks his name or reports his misdeeds, they will burn in the mouths of their victims so they can never utter his name again. The Wei Chivo also loves to devour humans, especially children. There's a popular story of one of the first encounters with the beast, when a young man was on his way to visit his girlfriend in the town of Mukuchi. On his way, a being appeared on the road, and it was a half baby goat, half demon, black in color with bulging and flashing red eyes. The man tried to defend himself but ended up on the ground unconscious. The next morning he was found by a stranger, and for several days after the incident he suffered from vomiting and a high fever. He became delirious and repeated the words Wei Chivo. According to some witnesses of the creature, they said they saw a trail of blood that followed behind the beast. The Wei Chivo is a popular mythological creature in the Mayan community, with locals as well as all over Mexico. The stories have been told throughout generations. In the Mayan town of Valladolid in Yucatan, the locals believe this creature is an evil sorcerer that is capable of transforming into a goat-like creature and wreaking havoc on the locals and their livestock. In at number 4 we have El Nahul. The legend of El Nahul is over 500 years old and is told by many around Mexico, including the Aztecs, Toltecs, Mixes, Mayans, and the Yaquis, just to name a few. This creature can appear in many areas of the country because its home is the heart of humans. The El Nahul is half human and half beast and is a sorcerer that transforms at night into an animal, often a black dog or a jaguar. It eats cattle and children's blood, but it thrives on people's fears, desires, and hatred. It has glowing red eyes and emits fear in its victims with its terrifying laughter and grunts. They have the power to metamorphose, hypnotize, bewitch, and can cause illness and death. In the Mexican worldview, the Nahuls were believed to be protected by Tezcatlipoca, the Lord of the Night. Legend has it that this creature could shed its skin and become an earthly creature. Mayan and Spanish hunters claimed that during the night they had killed an animal and at dawn the corpse had been transformed into a man. This made people of Mexico believe that these creatures were sorcerers with the ability to become half man and half animal. The word Nahul is of Nahuatl origin, which translates to what is my garment or skin. The El Nahuls have the ability to choose their powers for good or evil, but tend to get more joy out being evil and causing destructions. They stalk their prey during the night and are man-eating, mass murderers, thieves, and thrive on using their dark magic to overpower the weak. In at number 3 we have Sinsamito. The Sinsamito is another creature coming from the Mayan people and can be translated to the devil, and consists of many different nicknames including Lord of Animals, the Savage Jungle Monster, and the Powerful Guardians of the Hill. This creature's story has been told for over 20 centuries by many all over Mexico. The Sinsamito tends to live in caves deep in the mountains near forests and jungles but wander at night around the nearby villages. The Sintomaito is a muscular gorilla with human features and a man or woman's face, long hair on its head with thick brown hair all over its body, similar to a bear. Their feet are large, double the size of a human's, and are upside down. The creature's toes are spread apart and crooked backwards so they can't run, so they hop around using the support of a tree trunk, like a cane. It feeds on wild fruits, ashes of bonfires, and human flesh, and when they are in attack mode they have horrific panting sounds that sounds like thunder and screams that pierce the entire jungle. The Sintomaito is a creature that terrifies the Mayan people because it knows how to speak their language, and is immune to bullets and arrows. This creature's mission is to guard their home, which is the mountains, to terrorize the locals in the nearby villages and kill the men and kidnap the women whenever they can. These creatures are also legends and talked about by many in other places like Honduras and Belize. In Honduras, the people believe that they will hunt for women to kidnap. They find one to fall in love with and then will claim that woman as their own and she will never be seen again. In Belize, the Sintomaito feast on humans, and the belief is that if you're a man and you look at the beast in the eyes and are able to escape, then you have a 100% chance that they will die within the month. If you're a woman and you look at the beast in the eyes and they manage to escape, your life will be prolonged. Better to be a woman, I guess. In at number 2 we have Tucacami. The Tucacami originated from the indigenous people of Mexico. The Huichol in their language, Tucumami translates to the devil. The Huichol has talked about the Tucumami creature for centuries, and with each generation the story of this creature is passed on. The Huichol people reside in Sierra Madre Occidental Range in the states of Nayarit, Jalisco, Zacatecas, and Durango, as well as in the United States. This ghoulish demon is the grandson of Usta, who is the goddess of the underworld who devours the dead and a distant relative of all vampires that exist. They reside in the underworld, but they also haunt the desert during the new moon and appear in the hallucinations produced by peyote. Peyote is a small cactus and is used in many Native American religious ceremonies, especially among the Huichol people, and can cause hallucinations, and this terrifying creature knows this and takes advantage of it. This creature appears as a human body but sometimes looks like a skeleton or a wolf-like creature. It's black and white stripes and it's always blood-stained. Its face is painted like a horrific mask with dirty white spots, has buzzard or bat-like wings, and has massive horns on its head like a devil. The creature's mission is to become the ruler of the underworld, and it thrives off being a cannibal and scavenger to suck up bones, clean corpses, and snatch souls. The Tucacami feed on human flesh, and they never bathe or drink water, so if their appearance doesn't terrify you, their stench will. It also has the power to cause its victims dementia and use it as a weapon. They're devious, sneaky, and extremely dangerous. Even though this demonic creature is mythical, it's very real in the eyes of the Huichol people and many around Mexico. There have been many sightings throughout history, and the story of Tucacami lives on to this day. And finally, in at number 1 we have Chupacabra. The Chupacabra is a legendary creature known all over the world, but it originated in Mexico. It was first sighted in Puerto Rico, and it's believed to attack and drink the blood of livestock. The Chupacabra is a legendary creature known all over the world, but it originated in Mexico. It is believed to attack and drink the blood of livestock, especially goats. Chupacabra literally translate as goat sucker. This blood-sucking creature varies in appearance. Some say it looks like a large hairless dog, while others say it looks like an alien-like reptile and is the size of a small bear, with rows of spines reaching from the neck to the base of the tail. The most popular reports say this creature has leathery or scaly greenish-grey skin and sharp spines or quills running down its back. It is said to be 4 feet high and stand and hop similar to a kangaroo. Sightings have been reported in many parts of Mexico, and some in Puerto Rico since the 1970s. This creature has been seen as far as north as Maine and as far as south as Chile, and even outside of the US in parts of Russia and the Philippines. A 5-year investigation was done by Benjamin Radford that was documented throughout this book, Tracking the Chupacabra, and he had concluded that the description given by the original eyewitnesses, Madeline Tolentino, was based on a creature in the 1995 science fiction horror movie Species. The alien creature Syl is nearly identical to the description given by Madeline, and she claims to have seen the movie before. It was concluded at the end of Benjamin's investigation that he seriously undermines the credibility of the Chupacabra as a real animal. In October of 2010, University of Michigan biologist Barry O'Connor concluded that all of the Chupacabra reports in the United States were simply coyotes infected with a parasite, which would explain most of the features of the Chupacabra because they would be left with little fur, thickened skin, and a disgusting odor. There are also reports of stray Mexican hairless dogs being mistaken for these creatures. All of this doesn't stop the constant stories and sightings seen throughout Mexico and all over the world, and the story of the Chupacabra continues to be told and is said to be the most well-known mythological creature that comes from Mexico.
Number 5. Ningen. Our first creature to grace this list is the ningen. I've actually talked about these things on the channel before, but it's always good to get a refresher, especially when the subject in question is cryptids. This information might just save your life someday. Or at the very least, it gives you something interesting to talk about at a party. Either or, you're learning something today. The ningen is a cryptid that is a large aquatic whale or seal-like humanoid entity. Ningen actually translates to human in Japanese, stemming from the creature's often humanoid appearance compared to other cryptids. Marked by its blank expression and indiscernible features save for beady black eyes, the ningen is a 30-meter long heaving beast frequently spotted around the Arctic and Antarctic oceans. The ningen first rose to prominence in 2012 when it caught mainstream public attention on a Japanese paranormal forum. The legend began when a user posted a story of a whaling research crew that was sailing through the passage and saw something they didn't recognize under the water. Initially, the research staff assumed that it was a submarine, although there shouldn't have been any other vessels around. But they found that when they tried to get a closer look to ID the submarine, it had vanished entirely. While this was one of the first popularized cases of the ningen, legends have actually predated this, with the first ever sighting thought to be traced back to 2005, when images from Google Earth revealed what looked like strange creatures inhabiting the area around icebergs. Skeptics believe that sightings of the ningen could just be fragments of icebergs appearing to our eyes, and we want to see them as monsters, but I'd argue a creature like the ningen must have some degree of camouflage. It's an all-white entity, it's reasonable to assume it evolved to avoid human eyes and blend in with the surroundings. It's unclear if the ningen is a predatory cryptid, as all sightings of it reported as being benign or simply investigating humans. They don't appear to have any particular interest in aggravating us, as no attacks have ever been recorded or any cases of missing researchers involved. Perhaps it's as curious about what we are as we are curious of it. And hey, my delightful little ghouls and goblins, if you're curious about cryptids, well, there's simply nowhere else on the internet that's going to satisfy you as much as Top 5 Scary. And maybe the Cryptid Wiki, but they don't do videos. So click through and subscribe to Top 5 Scary and keep the screams coming all night long. Let's keep going. Number 4. Garappa. Garappa the Rappa. Sorry. Just Garappa. Garappa is an aquatic cryptid and not to be mistaken with its regional counterpart, the Kappa. Garappa, Arctic. Kappa, not Arctic. Write that down because there will be a test at the end of this video, and if you fail, I don't know what'll happen, but it's gonna be bad. Garappa is so fun to say though. I'm gonna throw that out there. Try that on for size at home. Tell me it doesn't feel fun coming out of your lips. I gotta get on topic here. Similar to a Kappa, a Garappa is described as having long, slender limbs like a frog or a monkey, and a turtle's shell on its back. It has a beak like a duck, long, stringy black hair, and a bony plate or a dish on top of its head that also makes for a good ashtray. You'll recognize if a Garappa is around because of the call it makes, a distinctive, and forgive me for this if it's not perfectly accurate, hyo sound. Although a Garappa may appear outwardly threatening, a Garappa is mostly shy creature, and they don't want the attention drawn onto them. I'm probably not helping the community much by discussing them here with you. They're shy and solitary, and usually keep to themselves, and usually tend to live in isolated communities by themselves, or with a few other Garappa. Despite their shyness though, they are reported to be incredibly strong, and can easily overpower a human if a fight were to occur. Some legends report too, the Garappa are a bit of a prankster and cause all kinds of mischief. They're able to mimic human voices. They say if you do capture one, a Garappa will do anything it can to escape, pleading with you, promising to leave people alone, to stop causing mischief, to stop luring people away, so they're not all bad. Number 3. Aklut. Coming up next on the list is a beast called the Aklut. If we're ranking based solely on appearances, well, this is one of the coolest cryptids I have ever seen in my hundreds of years inside the fog making videos for this channel. The Aklut is an Inuit legend, and is sometimes described as the whale wolf, which, come on, that is the coolest thing I have ever heard, whale wolf. Depending on the legend, sometimes the Aklut is described as being a hybrid, chimera-like creature, looking like a wolf with like a fin on the back of it, but other times it's purported that it can alternate between the two forms at will, and take the form that it pleases to suit it best for whatever it needs. They're said to be around if you can find trails of paw prints and dog tracks that lead into ocean waters, or seeing dog tracks around where there shouldn't conceivably be any in the Arctic. The whale that an Aklut takes the form of is predominantly described as an orca, and interestingly, another name for an orca is a sea wolf, lending some credence to the folklore. Stemming from early days beliefs when storytellers believed that all land animals had aquatic equivalents, like sea cows and so on. Not much is known outright about Aklut, instead what is passed from folklore. They're thought to be dangerously vicious towards humans, which makes sense considering both of the things that they are pretty nasty with some gnarly teeth. There aren't too many recorded sightings, although if they're shape-shifting creatures, who's to say you haven't seen dozens upon dozens of them without even knowing? Unless you don't spend too much time in the Arctic, I suppose, then you probably haven't seen any. There is one legend in particular I found that stood out for me. It tells the tale of an Inuit man who becomes obsessed with the sea and wants to be part of it. He returns from a fishing expedition to his village, but his obsession with the ocean has driven him too isolated to relate to the village anymore, and he finds himself in exile. He sets out and lives with a pack of wolves, but his affection for the ocean never dwindles. He casts himself out into the ocean to preserve himself forever in its waters, and through the malevolent energy inside him, he transforms into an orca. He spends his days swimming in the oceans as an orca, but whenever his hunger and his lust for revenge is awoken, he can return to the land and take a form as a wolf. Number 2. Hook Island Sea Monster. The Hook Island Sea Monster is a sea monster that originates from Hook Island, right? That's all the information we've got. Moving on, okay? Oh, nope, new information just came in. Okay, yeah, this is good. The beast is a 90-foot long black sea monster that resembles a massive tadpole. The thing was first sighted dating all the way back to 1964 by one Robert Laserac. Laserac was a sailor who was traveling with his family on an unknown expedition, who spotted the creature underneath the water, moving towards his ship with what seemed like an open maw ready to strike. Laserac noted that its tail appeared to be damaged, but he was unsure as to what could have caused lacerations on such a massive entity. He described it as, "Only when I got to within 20 feet of the creature that we could see its head clearly. The head was large, about 4 feet from top to bottom, with jaws about 4 feet wide. The lower jaw was flat like that of a sandfish. The skin was smooth, but rather dull, brownish black in color. The eyes seemed pale green, close to white. The skin looked more like that of a shark than it did an eel. There were no apparent scales, nor did we see any parasites around. We suppose the flexible tail would have shaken any off. There were no fins or spines, nor were there any apparent breathing openings, although there had to have been some. Perhaps we didn't see them because our attention was focused mainly on the creature's menacing mouth, the inside of which was whitish. The teeth appeared to be small. A fragment of some dark substance hung from the upper row of teeth, possibly a fish. As the monster was lying on the sandy bottom, we could not see the color of its belly. The creature looked to be about 90 feet long. Behind its body was 2 feet 4 inches thick and remained that way for about 25 feet. Then it gradually tapers off into a whip-like tail. The general color of the body was black with 1 foot wide brownish rings every 5 feet, the first starting just behind the head. The skin was smooth but dull. Aside from this detailed description, Laserac captured a few photos of the beast, although there has been some argument and debate as to the validity of the photos. But, Photoshop didn't exist in the 1960s, so there's no way that these could be photoshopped. Duh. Number 1. Organism 46b. Our number 1 creature is something called Organism 46b. Maybe it's an SCP that hasn't been classified yet. Organism 46 was discovered in Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake located under 2 miles of ice beneath the Vostok Station and the Antarctic, a Soviet research station established sometime in 1957. Organism 46b in question was an absolutely massive 33-foot long, 14-tentacled creature that displayed unimaginable abilities, some bordering on not being of this world. In studies, it was shown to have limbs that were capable of retaining autonomy, aggression, and even animation after being separated. It's been purported to have a toxin inside its body that is capable of releasing to immobilize prey from far away, and all studies of it showed that it is incredibly hostile. Makes sense. The legend of Organism 46b stems from an unknown date between February 2012 and November 2016. Pinpointing the location of that first true sighting has proved to be difficult. After 30 years of ice core drilling, miners at Vostok Station breached through to the lake in 2012, which is where the story comes from. The doctor who claims to have first discovered the creature is one Anton Padalka, although tracking him down has also been difficult. Entirely possible he's gone into hiding. He writes, "We encountered this organism, which we named 46b on our first day. It disabled our radio, which we later learned was intentional. It's also able to paralyze prey from a distance of 150 feet away by releasing venom into the water. Tragically, my colleague and my lifelong friend lost his life this way. He tread water wearing a blissful smile as the organism approached him. We watched helplessly as it used its arms to tear off his head and then popped the remains in his mouth. It was as if he'd been hypnotized telepathically. Eventually, the crew was able to trap the creature in a tank, and the surviving team gave the organism tourism off to the Russian government, where presumably it was studied. But you want this Crypt Keeper's opinion? Almost certainly a beast like this was taken to the SCP Foundation, where it could be properly secured, contained, and protected. I'd urge you to click through on the channel and hear some of our reports on the SCP Foundation if you're not familiar with the organization already. It's illuminating stuff.
Number 5 on this list is the Gila monster. This is a real-life creature that's literally named Monster. Like, what? The San Diego Zoo says, as the name might suggest, the Gila monster has one of the worst reputations in the reptile world. This lizard is often feared and has been described as frightful and repulsive, especially in local folklore. It's been accused of many things, such as spitting venom, leaping several feet in the air to attack, stinging with its tongue, and killing people with gusts of poisonous breath. We're glad you're reading this to learn the truth about these interesting lizards. Gila monsters are heavy-bodied lizards covered with bead-like scales called osteoderms that are black and yellow or pink, covering all but their belly. The Gila monster is venomous. Its venom is made up by a row of glands in the lizard's lower jaw. When the lizard bites, small grooves in the teeth help the venom flow into its prey. The bite of a Gila monster is very strong, and the lizard may not loosen its grip for several seconds. It may even chew so that the venom goes deeper into the wound. So what are the positives here? Well, there aren't really that many, but what's kind of the light at the end of the tunnel? Well, this poison usually doesn't kill humans, keyword being usually there. It will, however, be extremely painful and could paralyze you. Then, if you're paralyzed and you're out in the middle of the desert, well, death could come from a number of different ways at that point. Running into one of these things would definitely not be in your best interest. Number 4 on this list is the Indian saw-scaled viper. Our first snake on this list, guys. You guys knew that there would have to be a few of them popping up here. This is something that you really don't want to pop up in the desert, though. CN Traveler says, while plenty of snake species pack enough venom to bring down a human, not all of them take the multifaceted approach of the Indian saw-scaled viper. Sometimes called the little Indian viper or the saw-scaled viper, these reptiles live in some of the most populated areas of the region they occupy, which stretches well beyond India. They remain inconspicuous, though, by using their natural camouflage to blend into desert surroundings. Because they are typically active at night, it's best to listen for their defensive sizzling sound. This comes from a behavior called stridulation, in which the snake forms coils and rubs its scales together. Even with a warning, saw-scaled vipers are extremely aggressive, with more than double a lethal dose in each bite. Now, luckily for us, there is an anti-venom for this snake, but if you don't get it fast enough, then it's lights out. What's really not great about these little guys is how aggressive they are. Like, you could just be walking through the desert, minding your own business, and then, boom, out from behind a rock, this scaled viper leaps out, and that's it, you're toast. Snakes are scary, guys, especially the ones that are super aggressive. Number 3 on this list is the Arizona bark scorpion. Ever since I was a kid, scorpions have just been a big no for me. Like, they don't really look like something that should be in this world, really. Wikipedia says, the Arizona bark scorpion is a small light brown scorpion common to the Sonoran Desert in the southwestern United States and northwestern Mexico. An adult male can reach 8 centimeters in length, while a female is slightly smaller with a maximum length of 7 centimeters. The Arizona bark scorpion is the most venomous scorpion in North America, and its venom can cause severe pain, coupled with numbness, tingling, and vomiting in adult humans, typically lasts between 24 and 72 hours. Temporary dysfunction in the area stung is common, like a hand or possibly an arm can be immobilized or experience convulsions. It also may cause loss of breath for a short time. Due to the extreme pain induced, many victims describe sensations of electrical jolts after envenomation. Guys, could you imagine being stuck like that for 72 hours? That would be the most excruciating 72 hours of your life. Think about how badly you'd want to just fast forward life and get through that. And that's if you manage to survive the whole experience, which some people aren't even capable of doing. Number 2 on this list is the inland taipan. This thing is a born-bred killer and not what you want to come across in the desert. Wikipedia says, the inland taipan, also commonly known as the western taipan, the small-scaled snake, or the fierce snake, the species is endemic to semi-arid regions of Central East Australia. Aboriginal Australians living in those regions named the snake Dendrobilia. It was first described by Frederick McCoy in 1879 and then by William John Maclay in 1882, but for the next 90 years it was a mystery to the scientific community. No further specimens were found, and virtually nothing was added to the knowledge of this species until its rediscovery in 1972. Based on the median lethal dose value in mice, the venom of the inland taipan is by far the most toxic of any snake, much more so than even that of sea snakes, and it has the most toxic venom of any reptile when tested on human heart cell culture. The inland taipan is a specialist hunter of mammals, so its venom is specially adapted to kill warm-blooded species. It is estimated that one bite possesses enough lethality to kill at least 100 fully grown humans. It is an extremely fast and agile snake that can strike instantly with extreme accuracy, often striking multiple times in the same attack, and it will poison in almost every case. One bite kills over 100 adult humans. Are you actually kidding me? Think about how insane that is. Like, literally a milliliter of this stuff gets into your blood and that's it, game over. Body enters complete shutdown mode. It's also crazy fast and agile, so trying to fight this thing without getting bitten probably isn't an option. You'd need to fight it perfectly to escape unscathed. This thing doesn't even seem like something from this planet. Like, I get some serious boss fight vibes from this snake. Luckily, there isn't too many of them around, and you would need to go deep into some deserts to find them. Maybe don't do that though, because the outcome of finding one might not be the best. And finally, number 1 on this list is the six-eyed sand spider. So already this thing has a leg up on the competition because it has 6 eyes, and that's pretty freaking scary. Animal Corner says, the six-eyed sand spider is a medium-sized spider found in deserts and other sandy places in southern Africa. It is a member of the Sicariidae family, and close relatives of this spider are sometimes found in both Africa and in South America. Its nearest relatives are the recluse spiders, which are found worldwide. The six-eyed sand spider is also known as the six-eyed crab spider due to its flattened stance and latter-grade legs. The venom of this spider's bite is said to be one of the most dangerous on record. Over 38,000 species of six-eyed sand spiders have been identified. However, because of their great ability for hiding, it's believed that about 200,000 species exist. So there are tons of these things, and they also have the deadliest venom. Great, just absolutely fantastic. I love that for us. Don't know if you guys can tell, but there's some serious sarcasm going on in my voice right now. Spiders are personally my least favorite animal on the planet, and considering this particular one has 6 eyeballs and is super deadly, it's gonna be number 1 on my list. But number 5 on this list is El Chupacabra. You guys should know who El Chupacabra is by this point, considering we've talked about this creature tons on this channel before. Basically, it is a legendary creature in the Central Americas that's said to drink the blood of livestock. Although this creature seems like it's probably fake, it might be real. Just not exactly how we might expect it to be. Carolyn Beccia says, we are taught from an early age, don't approach scary looking dogs. And while no one can get a clear picture of Bigfoot, the Kraken, or the Loch Ness Monster, there is one monster that is oddly not camera shy, the legendary El Chupacabra. The Chupacabra was first sighted in Puerto Rico in the 70s. A wave of sightings followed in the late 1990s. During this time, livestock throughout Puerto Rico was found drained of blood. These Chupacabra, or goatsucker attacks, caused panic with local residents who claimed a vampire was feeding on their livestock. Although descriptions have varied, most describe a hairless, alien-like monster with spikes going down its back and glowing red eyes. It sounds dubious, but how could so many people be taking pictures of the same ugly dog-like creature? The answer may be one found in science. One plausible theory is that these creatures are coyotes suffering from sarcoptic mange, an inflammatory skin condition caused by the itch-induced inducing parasite mite scabies. Wolves, dogs, and coyotes infected with scabies will have extreme hair loss, skin shriveling, and constricted blood vessels that can lead to life-threatening fatigue. And while usually a coyote or wolf will have no problems hunting prey, once infected by sarcoptic mange, coyotes may choose to hunt more available meals such as livestock. So it's actually possible that this creature is real, it's just not what we thought at all. I know that this takes away from some of the mystery and lore around it, but ultimately this would make a lot of sense. When you think about it, what's more likely? A space alien comes crashing to Earth and starts sucking the blood of our livestock, or some coyotes get a disease and start doing it instead? I tend to side with the coyotes. Either way though, that doesn't make these coyotes nice or friendly or approachable. Still treat them like you would a chupacabra. With caution. Number 4 on this list is the Stymphalian birds. We gotta go all the way back to ancient Greece for this one. Caroline Beccius says, one of Hercules' labors was to kill the Stymphalian birds, man-eating birds who had the peculiar habit of throwing dung. The Greeks were not the only ones who liked to scare their youngsters with killer bird tales. The Maori tribe of New Zealand told similar legends of the Pokie or Haikoi, a giant black and white bird that swooped down from the sky to pick off small children. Scientists today know that these thunderbirds existed. Called Haast's eagle, the bird stood over 6 feet tall and had a wingspan of over 8 feet. The Haast eagle would sit atop trees and then ambush its prey by swooping down at 60-mile-per-hour speeds. Then it would disembowel its meal with sharp talons before the poor slob could even worry about dung throwing. Hercules would never have survived to these hellbirds, but you can sleep well tonight. The Haast's eagle went extinct around the 15th century. Anything that could annihilate Hercules would definitely be a no-go for me, guys. That dude was literally a demigod, and if these guys could have beaten him, then we wouldn't have stood a chance. Lucky for us, they are extinct now, but for the people back then, they would have had their hands full with these creatures. If, of course, they still had hands and the beast hadn't ripped them off yet. Number 3 on this list is the Kraken. We have one of the most famous folklore creatures here, guys, that as we know now, turned out to be real. The Kraken was especially big in Norse culture. All of those people up there in the Nordic regions feared this wicked beast, as it was said to be able to pull down entire ships with hundreds of men on board. Instances where exactly that happened did actually transpire. Ships with tons of people on them that were literally made for battle would be out on the water, and then boom, Kraken attack and they're toasted. Except it wasn't really the Kraken now, was it? The Kraken looks very similar to an actual animal that we have in our world that is also super deadly and really strong. The giant squid. Giant squids, in case you couldn't tell from the name, are giant, or pretty big. They are so big actually, they would have had the capability to take down an old ship like this. In fact, we've even seen these beasts do some serious damage to submarines, and they're made of metal. They easily could have sunk a wooden boat from hundreds or thousands of years ago. And if you were a sailor on said wooden boat and you saw this massive creature with several tentacles sucking you to the bottom of the ocean, then you would probably exaggerate what happened as well too. It's very easy to see how the legend of the Kraken got started and started to snowball as more encounters with the giant squid happened. I'm glad that the Kraken isn't technically real, because the giant squid is already bad enough. Number 2 on this list is the Charybdis. What was initially thought to be a folkloric creature may have been real, but not exactly in the way that we might think. Caroline Beccius says, nothing is more frightening than being sucked underwater by a whirlpool that feeds on human flesh 3 times a day. The Charybdis first appeared in Homer's Odyssey. During this epic tale, Odysseus must sail between the 6-headed sea monster Scylla and the flesh-eating whirlpool Charybdis. These 2 dueling sea monsters attacked in intervals, much like a whirlpool's regular intervals of tidal activity. It sounds terrifying, but whirlpools that pull ships underwater really do happen. Known today as Garofalo, one is found in the strait between Italy's mainland land in Sicily. Garofalo occurs when winds blow across the strait in opposition to the tides. This makes it technically not a whirlpool because there's no circular motion, but it does have the ability to wreak havoc on ships and pull humans into a watery grave. So this deadly creature was real, it just ended up not being a creature at all. Back in the times when these stories were written, there would have been many folklore legends about evil sea monsters that could pull brave sailors into the sea. The reality of the situation is though that the ships we had back then kinda sucked, and it was a lot easier for the weather and other conditions to sink the ships. That's why there were so many legends of monsters coming from the ocean for so long. Finally, number 1 on this list is the incubus demon. This demon is an evil demon who is thought to sneak into your home and have sexual relations with you as you're sleeping. This creature is real in a sense. It just so happens that it's actually in our minds. During the witch hunt craze of the 16th and 17th century, people had some really messed up ideas on how human reproduction occurred. One way was for a demon to steal a man's seed and impregnate a helpless woman during her sleep. The monster that stole the precious sperm was called a succubus, and the monster that implanted the sperm was called an incubus. The incubus would sit on top of your chest while you slept, making it impossible for you to move if you woke. Sort of like being assaulted by a possessed sexomniac. But before you condemn medieval people as crazed horn dogs trying to attack innocent women, there is a scientific basis for believing in such monsters. The condition is called sleep paralysis. During sleep paralysis, you are fully awake but cannot move or cry for help. It feels like you've had a stroke, but although it's terrifying, sleep paralysis is harmless. Most sleep experts attribute it to being caught between REM, rapid eye movement, and NREM, non-rapid eye movement sleep. Either way, before sleep stages were understood, we can see how our ancestors would have thought it was a demon sitting on your chest. So literally this demon creature that apparently attacked people was never real at all, it just felt extremely real from our minds. I've experienced sleep paralysis before, and although I didn't experience any demon thing, I can 100% see how people would have believed this back then. It could definitely have felt like that and would have got people on the lookout for this sick and twisted demon of the night.
Coming in at number 5, we have Long Horse. This creature has a horse skull for a head and has an extremely long neck with pieces of what appears to be a mane hanging over the neck. Its long neck bends like a finger, which can allow this creature to create as many or as little joints as possible, and can create extremely loud cracking noises that will send chills down your spine. It basically looks like a massive bony snake with a skull horse head, and it scares you just by looking at it. The Long Horse is one of the few Trevor Henderson creatures that has so many different abilities, such as teleportation, body manipulation, extreme regeneration, immortality, dream and reality manipulation, ability to infinitely expand its neck, and can regrow his bones if torn off. Despite its terrifying appearance, it's said to not be harmful to humans, but its appearance is most definitely scarier than a demon. It is said that the Long Horse is the human's protector. Its goal is to warn humans of upcoming danger and disasters to come. The sign he shows to humans is supposedly when you hear the loud cracking of its neck or actually see the creature, that's your sign a disaster is coming your way. Another theory is that he actually is a hunter of humans, despite other Trevor Henderson creatures who hide or stalk their prey. The Long Horse hides in plain sight and lets the prey come to him. When you see him or hear his neck cracking, that's his way of luring you into his trap by appearing to help but actually tricking you into being taken by this monster and never to return. It is said once he disappears with his prey, he moves on to another place so he isn't caught. So regardless if he is nice or evil, tread lightly if you are seen by this terrifying creature. The origin of this creature isn't particularly known, but it's said to have been around since the ancient times, when an ancient cave painting was discovered of the Long Horse surrounded by 3 people. Also, fun fact about the Long Horse, it is said to smell like cinnamon, so if you smell cinnamon you may encounter this creature. This doesn't help me, all my candles are cinnamon. Love cinnamon. Coming in at number 4, the lamb. The lamb is pink and fleshy with 4 legs that hang down from its body like noodles, and it tends to float in midair. Its body is made out of some sort of fleshy vein-like strings. This creature basically looks like a giant brain with legs. The lamb also has a large hole near the top of its body, and it's unknown if it's a large eye or a mouth. This hideous creature is related to 2 other Trevor Henderson creatures, Big Charlie and Lil Nugget. It is said the lamb is actually Lil Nugget grown from Big Charlie's meat chunks that have been cursed and grows hostile and has an appetite for flesh. The lamb doesn't possess too many different abilities compared to other Trevor Henderson creatures, but the ones it does are deadly. It said this creature causes massive psychic damage to its victims, and also if you try to shoot the being, it won't do much, so if you choose to try and run instead, you better be quick before the creature causes you a blood clot or the gravity to reverse. This monster is not only hideous, but it is extremely dangerous. If you ever come in contact with it, take extreme caution. It's also unknown on how to defeat this creature due to its psychic manipulation and thirst for human flesh. All I can say is if you come in contact with the lamb, you better run quick and don't stop. Coming in at number 3, wildfire giants. These are a large group of mysterious giant creatures, and each of these 8 giants, they have their own unique appearances, sizes, abilities, and behaviors. The creatures that are considered to be a part of this group is the hexapod giant, roothead, the meatball, signal bug, the darkness, fog riser, giant moth, and the bloomer. Each of these massive creatures are terrifying in their own way, but the scariest and most harmful to humans is the meatball. This monster looks like a large pinky red ball, appearing to be extremely wrinkly and fleshy with many thick veins and lumps bulging. Near the bottom of the head is a large mouth with thin and fleshy lips and several sets of sharp teeth in the front and back of its mouth. To the eye, this thing is hideous, which makes it even scarier because it's terrifying to look at. Considered to be one of the most intelligent members of the wildfire giants, the meatball possessed many different abilities, including levitation. They can bite large targets that causes severe damage and leaves a large amount of saliva after attacking their prey, which could drown or at least slow down their victims. This creature can also ascend from above to attack an individual or even a large group of people before disappearing back into the clouds above, and it's said that this creature not only kills people for food but also just for fun. Another terrifying fact about the meatball is that it has a laugh that resembles a loud shriek, which can cause victims temporary deafness, disorientation, and could possibly rattle their organs. The wildfire giants are a true force to be reckoned with due to their intimidating presence, dangerous abilities, and massive size, and they tend to roam around the state of California. So if you're going on vacation, be sure to make sure you're aware of your surroundings and stay in a group so you don't encounter these terrifying creatures. Coming in at number 2, we have the Wandering Faith. This dinosaur-looking creature looks like something straight out of Jurassic Park. This is one of the largest Trevor Henderson creatures. It can be up to 10 kilometers tall with 4 massive legs and grayish black skin. They appear to be quite skeletal in appearance, as the shape of the bones are visible despite having quite thick skin, and its body is lumpy and round but doesn't have any visible bones sticking out. Its neck is almost as thick as its body, that leads to its strange tubular head, and its neck is so long it can travel far into the clouds. The most terrifying is that it has 4 long tentacles branching out of its body, and those are used to lift its prey into its mouth and feed on them. The Wandering Faith is one of the most known members of the group of the giants. This group of creatures are said to roam the earth in a separate universe than other cryptids. Another scary fact about this creature is that it's able to reproduce. Yes, you heard that right. There could be multiple of these massive creatures wandering around. The theory says that it's able to reproduce with other giants and looks obviously very similar to the Wandering Faith, but it's smaller and thinner in size. Their name comes from a theory that the Wandering Faith was sent down from heaven to grab the believers, and their long tentacles actually raise them up to heaven. Even though it's ultimately their death, they say they go on to a better place, and this creature only attacks the most pure and faithful people, often being worshipped by people of faith. Also, something to know is that this creature only comes out on stormy and foggy days, so my advice would be to stay inside on those days to keep yourself safe. Unless you are a worshipper of this monstrous creature and want to come into contact with him, then make sure to get out on those days and wish you luck. And finally, in at number 1, we have bridge worm / highway worm. The infamous bridge worm is a massive 85-ton long worm that is 9 feet long with human arms, and their face includes a layer of 36 sharp teeth that lines its huge mouth. This creature lurks under bridges along the highways. This terrifying creature can change its face through a flap of skin to lure their victims into thinking they're harmless. But before they realize they're in danger, the monster jumps out of the bridge showing its horrific grin, then grabbing the victim with its bony arms and ultimately killing them. If you get away from the creature's first attack, you better run because they have the ability to chase you down, so you better be quick. Also, the bridge worm's eyes are slanted and tend to flop around when they are attacking their prey. Something to note is that these creatures are very deceptive. They have the ability to camouflage themselves from you despite their size, and also have massive amounts of strength, so they're pretty much a triple threat, so beware. Once the bridge worm reaches adulthood, it is considered to now be a highway worm. It is theorized that this creature is a mutation of some sort of large worm species. Looking obviously similar to the bridge worm, its skin is grey and more of a dull yellow that appears leathery in texture. It also has 2 bright yellow glowing eyes on the top of its head. Similar to its younger self, the highway worm hides or camouflages itself before attacking its prey. It tends to lure out drivers on the highways that are alone, lunge out, break break the car window and quickly grab the driver with its sharp teeth and go back into hiding. Humans tend to be the main source of food for this creature, but they also feed on birds, snakes, deer, and larger rodents. The most terrifying fact is that it's unknown if you can capture or terminate this creature, so be careful and make sure to check your surroundings when traveling under bridges and on highways at night, because that is when this creature tends to hunt their prey due to them being nocturnal. The bridge and highway worms tend to exist mainly in the United States, in states like Florida, Alabama, and Georgia, but have also been spotted in areas such as the UK, France, Germany, and Denmark. Coming in at number 5, we have breaking news. This creature is one of the most iconic creations coming from Trevor Henderson, next to the Wandering Faith because of his appearance, massive size, and overall mystery. This creature is terrifyingly tall with a vaguely humanoid appearance, yet looks somewhat twisted and disfigured. His entire body is covered in what appears to be jet black skin, and his legs and torso look similar to humans just without certain features like hair. This monstrous creature stands over 1,200 feet tall and weighs over 4 million pounds, so it could quickly overpower you. His body is very malnourished looking with very thin legs and ribs popping out. His arms span 3,000 feet and is much thinner than his legs, but pretty much dominate his whole body. The most terrifying feature of breaking news is his crooked head, twisted neck, and featureless face with no mouth, eyes, ears, hair, anything. Just by looking at this creature will send chills down your spine. The behavior of this creature is not well known, and Trevor doesn't give much information about this creature besides 2 images, which make the mystery of this creature even greater. Just his appearance and mysteriousness makes this one of the most creepy Trevor Henderson creations. One fact has been confirmed about the breaking news, and that he is a part of the Giants, so people believe his behavior is similar to other members of this group. This massive creature is confirmed to be a destructive giant. He wanders around looking for any cities or humans it can find and destroy them, as well as any human he deems sinful or unworthy will be killed by this monster. The creature's massive size would easily allow it to cause mass destruction to not only humans but on a city-wide scale, since it has human-like hands to grab people or demolish buildings. Its human-like body would also help it to be an extremely fast-running creature and could also crawl on all fours for additional speed. And not only is his jet black skin terrifying to look at, but it helps him stay camouflaged at night. Another very creepy thing about breaking news is that despite having no face, it possesses all normal senses, and it is rumored this creature has some sort of additional supernatural or enhanced senses. In at number 4 we have Big Charlie. Big Charlie is a particularly strange creation of Trevor Henderson's because not much is known about the creature. Big Charlie is a large mammal-like creature that resembles some sort of mutant cattle, but also has a beak-like protrusion on the tip of his mouth. Its body is extremely skinny. You can actually see his ribcage popping out along with a thick dark mane that goes from his head to the back of this creature. His eyes are large and slightly bulge out and are white and foggy, so some believe this creature may be blind. According to Trevor Henderson's past Tumblr post, he mentioned that Big Charlie had escaped a meat processing plant, meaning he is some sort of animal hybrid made out of different kinds of meat. Creepy, I know. So many things are creepy and scary about this creature, one being that his location is unknown and he is apparently on the run, so Big Charlie could be anywhere. It is believed that this creature sometimes sheds his meat, and those pieces turn into different creations of Trevor's, such as Little Nugget, then grows up into the Lamb or Void Nugget. It is said that Big Charlie is one of the weakest creatures, if not the weakest out of all of Trevor Henderson's creations, but it doesn't mean that it's extremely terrifying to look at and could cause harm because he is over 20 feet tall and weighs over 30 tons, so it could easily crush you. Big Charlie is known to be pretty harmless to humans, but if it feels threatened, all bets are off. A fun fact about Big Charlie is he is part of the SCP community and is SCP-4158 by the SCP Foundation. In at number 3 we have Good Boy. Good Boy is some sort of dog-like creature, but definitely not as cute. This creature has jet black fur and has a terrifying mean expression with foggy bluish white eyes, with no pupils and a gaping mouth with no teeth, tongue or uvula. Along with his other scary features, Good Boy's nose resembles that of a skeleton and has long legs, and its feet appear to be stubbed. Good Boy is known to be very evil and can run as fast as a cheetah, so if you come in contact with this mutant dog, it would be very hard to outrun him. Along with being an evil being, he possesses a toxic bite, sharp claws and harsh kills. In the past, Trevor started releasing artworks of many of his monsters as patron saints, and Cartoon Cat and Good Boy were one of the many creatures, but compared to the others, they weren't called patron saints and didn't have the sun-like symbols behind them like the others do. It is unknown why they didn't have these features, and after this incident some people started theorizing that Cartoon Cat and Good Boy are connected. Good Boy stalks and hunts his prey. He likes to roam around hotels and residential areas near people's front doors and waits until his victim opens the door before he ultimately kills them. It is unknown what the intention of these creatures are, but many speculate that he enjoys roaming around in order to eventually enter people's home to kill them, and he usually does these attacks at night. Due to his black fur, he can easily stay hidden from his prey. Good Boy is also known to reside in North America, and that's as specific as it gets, so beware if you're living there. Coming in at number 2 we have Bellringer. This grotesque creature weighs around 210 pounds, over 6 feet tall, and looks to have yellowish orange skin. The Bellringer depicts a human-like figure, and the entirety of this creature besides his arms appear to be mere skeleton, held together by some sort of fully encompassing web-like material, possibly muscular tissue or mucus. His body is entirely comprised of uneven ribs due to the pelvis, and is connected to a spinal cord and columns that appear to be smoothly bent in a zigzag line, starting at the back of the torso, then the front, then the back again. The creature's chest area has a very large and wide rib cage, with 8 ribs on one side and 13 on the other, and the ribs on the right side are longer than the left. Strangely, the arms of this monster are connected to the lower part of its chest area rather than the shoulders. They are also not actually connected to any of the other bones, instead being connected to the encompassing body material with another red substance, almost appearing to be glued on. The Bellringers tend to be motivated by hunting humans and consuming them in order to survive. Some abilities and survival tactics he possesses is pack hunting, clawing, camouflage, intelligence, and disorientating his victims. The location of this scary creature isn't known, but it is rumored he resides in a half-burned, abandoned high school. An interesting fact about the Bellringer is that he is rumored to be a possible relative to the famous Siren Head, but that can't be confirmed. I feel like this creature's appearance alone makes it terrifying, creepy, ugly, scary, and terrifying. Along with his abilities, the Bellringer is one of the biggest threats to humans out of all of Trevor Henderson's creations. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Pink Man / Forgotten Baby. This creature somewhat resembles that of a human baby, but much more hideous and frightening looking. Having pinkish skin and a very large head, its torso looks very thin and malnourished, and is considered to be an extraterrestrial figure. The theory is that the bizarre body structure and large head and beady eyes line up with a stereotypical depiction of an alien. It's said that this alien was sent to Earth with the mission to adapt to the environment and thrive in it, and the baby-like appearance may have been a poorly made ploy to get humans to believe they're cute and innocent, but ultimately making it an easier kill to the Forgotten Baby. This frightening creature stands at over 7 feet and weighs over 130 pounds, so that is a big boy. The most notable and disturbing feature of this baby is its large, bald, and fleshy head, and seems to be much larger than the rest of the body. His face is completely expressionless, but has large, beady, and soulless eyes with black irises taking up the top half of the face. A single, hardly visible nostril appears to be the fusion of 2 nostrils, are in the center of it with a partially open mouth with very large red lips and what looks like blood dripping from it. This is basically a baby from hell. There isn't too much known about this strange creature's behavior, but we do know that the Forgotten Baby is a sinister cryptid. The most emphasized ability of this creature is its extreme stealth and quietness, which allows this creature to sneak into people's homes without them noticing until it's too late. It is said this demonic creature thrives killing and eating people, so it constantly is breaking and entering houses to take revenge on people, and impaling them with its skinny sharp legs and devouring its victims. The Forgotten Baby also has enhanced agility, above average eyesight, and has the ability to cause depression to its victims. So for all these reasons, that is why the Forgotten Baby is number 1 on this list.